Warning, warning. This is a global ice out. Testing the right speaker. Right. Testing the left speaker. Left. Sound successfully recovered. Swan Commander. Connected. And now, the countdown has begun. And now, are you ready for a journey that goes beyond the norms? The Federal Prospects Hockey League just celebrated its 15th anniversary. With a footprint and fan base rapidly expanding, Swan Hockey is now bringing you behind the scenes. Beyond what you see at games. Beyond the arenas. Beyond the crowds. This is FPHL, Beyond the Glass.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of FPHL Beyond the Glass. I'm your host, Eric Swanek, Swan Commander on social media. This is the official podcast of the Federal Prospects Hockey League, and this is the first episode back after the new year. Hope everyone had an awesome new year. We are at about the halfway point of this year's FPHL schedule, so we're going to dive into a couple things. We're going to catch up with Dave Jackson. We got a little bit of a different segment there. We're going to dive into some suspensions, but we're also going to dive into what life as a referee is like in the FPHL. So before we dive into that, we are going to reintroduce the proof of attendance tokens for this podcast. We're going to do it a little bit differently, though. The process to claim them is still going to be the same, but we're going to do it for, you have to be here watching this Wednesday night when it airs. We're going to leave the redemption open until 9 p.m. Eastern Wednesday nights. So right after the show, enter the code at swanhockey.io and you will be eligible to receive the token. We will give you that code here in a little bit later on in the show. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this Club Fed for now. If you have 5 proof of attendance tokens, you will have entry into the club. So at this time, 5 proof of attendance tokens is what you will need. You'll have entry into the club. And once we have 10 club members, the first thing on our roadmap, if you want to call it, is the club is going to have its own chat channel in the Discord server. So once we're at 10 members, we will open up that feature. And remember, make sure your Discord is linked to your profile on swanhockey.io. You can do it all from your dashboard, and you will automatically get the role for a Club Fed. And once we're at 10 members, we will open up the private chat channel. All right, so let's dive into the FPHL. So we're at about the halfway point. Pulling up the standings here. First, let's look at the attendance. So over the summer, we were saying how the league was expecting over 1 million fans through the doors this year. Right now, our top attendance leaders, top 5 is Topeka, Binghamton, Monroe, Athens, and PD in that order. Topeka, Binghamton, Monroe, Athens, all averaging over 4,000 fans a game. PD slightly behind at just under 4,000 fans a game. So really cool to see the attendance come in. If we go over to the actual league standings, as we mentioned in the past couple of episodes, Binghamton is kind of running away with the Empire at this point. A reminder, the Federal League does use the 3-point system. So these races are a little bit closer than they seem, but right now Binghamton is leading the Empire with 73 points. Port Huron is behind them with 52. What's the most interesting probably is Indiana having the turnaround that they're having. They still sit in last in the Empire, but they're not in last in the league anymore overall. In fact, there's 2 other teams behind them. So really cool to see what Everett's doing in Indiana and getting that ship turned around. And there's a lot of hockey left. Who knows? They, very, very well may be in playoff contention. So, we'll kind of see how that goes. Right now in the Empire division, Blue Ridge and Danbury are neck and neck at 4 and 5 in the seedings, fighting for that 4th playoff spot. Blue Ridge is 33 points. Danbury 32. Blue Ridge has a game in hand, but that race is very, very tight. We'll see how that comes down to the wire. I think that'll probably stay pretty tight going down. The obvious, I don't think anybody's catching Binghamton. I anticipate that they will finish in first place. But what's really interesting is once the playoffs roll around, really anything can happen. And we almost saw the upset last year, but with the short series, best 2 out of 3, I mean, it really, you lose 2 games at the wrong time, season's over. So it really, once playoff rolls around, that's one thing that's really interesting with the FPHL is the way the playoffs are done. It really is a wild card. If we head over to the Continental Division, Monroe is sitting in first place, and they are on a 12-game heater right now. So last week, we sat down with Jay Krupp. If you haven't watched that one, go check it out. It was a fun show to do. But Monroe is on a 12-game heater. They've won 12 in a row. They're sitting in first place with 64 points. Athens is right behind them. Athens has a game in hand. They're at 61 points. But Monroe right now they're hot. They're real hot in the Continental. Again, 12-game heater, sitting in first place. What's interesting about the Continental is it's kind of similar. It's kind of playing out similar to the Empire, where you have teams 4 and 5 in the standings, which is Twin City and PD. They're tied for points. They're both sitting at 33. So that fight for that final playoff spot in the Continental Division, I say final playoff spot, but we still have a lot of hockey left. Anything could really happen. But right now, those 2 teams are in that positioning to be fighting for that final playoff spot. And again, super close in the standings, both at 33 points. That one, it obviously can go either way. There's still a lot that could happen, but interesting to see how both divisions are kind of shaken up a little bit the same in terms of that last playoff spot, the race being super tight. We mentioned that Monroe is on a 12-game heater. Binghamton's heater came to an end this weekend with Watertown pulling off an upset and beating them. Binghamton was, they were, I think they're at 15 in a row, or they're going for 15 in a row. I think they were at 15 in a row, but, Watertown spoiled that. And, it again, just kind of goes back to what I was saying before about anything can happen, with the short playoff series. So it's going to be interesting. That's the one thing, the league, anybody really can beat anybody every night. We've seen it. Obviously there's some matchups that aren't likely for that to happen, but anybody can beat anybody every night. And with the short playoff series, upsets are, at a higher, I guess at a higher opportunity rate than if the series were 7 games. Another big topic throughout the first half of this season has been the expansion. So the league will expand to Minnesota next season, to Thief River Falls, and there's neutral site games scheduled for Minnesota and New Jersey, which is exciting. So there will be neutral site games this year in Minnesota and in New Jersey. And really exciting to see where the league is going. We've said it, throughout the whole summer series of this podcast that the league is, it's growing in terms of, footprint, fan base. It's really cool to see. We're going to get FPHL Commissioner Don Kirnan on the phone and check in with him and kind of review the first half of the year here. All right, we got Commissioner Don Kirnan on the phone. Don, what's going on?
Not much, Eric. Just banging away here.
Yep, I hear you. So first half of the season, roughly in the books, heading into the new year. What, from a league standpoint, from your standpoint, how was the first half of the season? Happy, unhappy, mix of both?
Well, yeah, always in every season, there's always teams that are doing better than expected and worse than expected, but by and large, it's been pretty successful. There's a lot of venues that have done very well, so we're happy for that, and we hope that the second half we'll see some of the races tighten up a little bit, but we certainly have a couple of leaders, like 2 or 3 teams that have kind of separated themselves, and then we have another group of 4 or 5, and then we have another group of 3 or 4. So it's pretty much a little bit top heavy with 3 or 4 teams, and the rest of the league is, any given night somebody can beat somebody else. So that's the way it's supposed to be.
And we touched on that earlier, where and with the Federal League's 3-point system, some of the races are closer than they seem. And, in both divisions, there's a little bit of similarity, particularly deeper on in the standings. So both divisions have their, Binghamton, obviously, the heavy favorite in the Empire. And then you got Monroe and Athens battling for that top spot in the Continental. And then what's interesting, and I want to see how far Columbus is in 3rd in the Continental. So they're decent, again, these races are closer than they seem, but in the Continental, Monroe and Athens are the 2 that are battling for that top spot. But what's really interesting is when you look at 4 and 5 in both divisions, so Twin City and PD in 4 and 5 in the Continental, they're tied at 33 points. And then you look at 4 and 5 being Blue Ridge and Danbury in the Empire division, they're separated by 1 point. So that final playoff spot, and again, still a lot of hockey to be played here. We got a whole second half of the season, but that final playoff spot, both divisions are very, very tight in terms of those races right now. And who knows, there could be, again, a lot of hockey left. Things, we could see things change. Maybe we even see Indiana creep up and, become a contender for a final spot.
True. And that's basically what you're looking for. It's a scenario where, we have had, the 2 top teams lose to teams that are in, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th place, which, shows that, any given night, something can happen. And of course, with hockey, you have a scenario where, you could be outplayed, but your goalie that night is spectacular, and, you can get victories when you look at the squad and you say, well, there's one team's, got so many points, the other team's 30 points behind. But if the goalie has a great night, or some couple players on another team have a career night, and any given night, then, you can steal a win from a top flight team. So that's what you're trying to do from an organizational standpoint within the league. And and that happened a little bit last weekend. So that's something that, we like to see. Port Huron is playing very well. They had, a spell where they weren't, but now they seem to have turned it around, and they seem to, over the last 2 or 3 years, they seem to be able to beat anybody on any given night. And so I think that there's, I think a lot of the games are very competitive. I saw Mississippi was blown out a couple of weeks ago, but then they took the same team a week later to within a 1-goal game. I guess it was an empty netter, but they totally turned that around. So I think everything is situated where I think as long as any team can win any game, that's what you're looking for in a league.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I mentioned before that I think is really interesting and really cool with this league is the short playoff series, right? So, you talk about anything can happen any night, and a team can steal a game, or a goalie could steal a game. I mean, you could steal a series in this league, which is really cool. And we almost had the upset last year with Port Huron over Binghamton, where Binghamton was, the favorite, and they almost got upset in the playoffs. And you can have that too. Any given team can win every given night, which, again, are you going to steal a 7-game series? Those are probably fewer and farther between, but, best 2 out of 3, anything can happen, which is really exciting for the fans too. Like it does provide, more, more hope for a lot of teams that, hey, we could very well win a series.
Well, that's in all the sports, whether it's baseball or, when you have a series, or hockey, any hockey league is, you could be 50, 60 points ahead of somebody in the standings, but all you get is one additional home game. And if you lose that home game, then you've lost your entire advantage that you had for the entire season. So all the team really has to do is, hold their own, home games and win just one game away from home, and then you've stolen the series. And like you mentioned, Port Huron held their home game. They, their goalie had a shutout. And what they needed to do was out of the next two games, they needed to steal a game out of Binghamton, which they were not able to do. But that's basically what's involved. So I think it's we have a team that's near the bottom in Watertown. They won a game Friday night against the best based on points, Binghamton. So it's if they did play in the playoffs, then what they would have had to do is they would have to win one game in Binghamton. They did lose a game in overtime to Binghamton in Binghamton earlier in the season. So you have to win one game away from home and hold the one game that you have at home. So it's so that's, like you mentioned, it can you can swing things in the playoffs, and basically, you just have to get into the playoffs. And in the way we set up the format this year, we felt it was better to have four teams from each division. The fifth team didn't make a lot of sense. So this way, there's more urgency to be in fourth place, and the logistics of trying to play the one game play-in game didn't make a lot of sense. So we're happy the way the playoffs go. There's going to be a lot of, competitiveness to get into the top four in both divisions. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And we're halfway through. And like you mentioned, you got points, you got teams that are tied in points. So it's going to be a tight one, by the time the season ends.
Yeah, absolutely. And still a lot of hockey to be played. I mean, we could even see some drastic changes in the standings. I mean, like you look at the NHL years ago, St. Louis Blues, the year they won the cup, I think they were in like dead last in January, right? And then they come back to win the Stanley Cups. There's still a lot to be played. One of the biggest surprises for me, and I think it's really great to see, is Indiana having some success. And they're, like I said, we could see them wind up heating up. I mean, they obviously had some major challenges starting the year. Things weren't looking too good. Some things blown way out of proportion. But if you look at them now, I mean, they're not like there's two teams behind them in the standings from the other division.
Correct. I think it's it's just I think the new coach has done a great job there, and I think it's worked out very well for them. And I believe it's one of the things is it's who you play. So it's just they won, I think, 3 games against Port Huron. Port Huron has beaten Binghamton, and Port Huron has played everybody tough. So they've beaten some very good teams.
And they lost to Binghamton in overtime, didn't they? Didn't Indiana take Binghamton to overtime?
I think, it was either that or very close. So I think it was a scenario where they gave Binghamton a close game.
Yeah, it may have been a 1-goal game or something like that. Because I think Topeka, maybe they took to overtime. I don't know.
No, but that's where I think you have to. I know Topeka definitely did go in overtime with Indiana. So I think it's a scenario where all these teams are kind of any team can win any night, which is what you're looking for. And it should be interesting. The second half, there's going to be a lot of close races, and I think the playoffs are going to be interesting too, because whatever 4 teams in each bracket make the playoffs, I feel that they're going to be able to, be competitive. If you're a number 4, I think you'll be able to play with the number 1 and give them a game. And 2 and 3, obviously, is going to be a toss-up on both sides. But I think it should be very entertaining and very fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that's interesting about the playoffs that I don't think most people realize, and I didn't realize it either until Smitty told me years ago, and it's a very valid point, is that the home team that gets the home ice advantage, they have the home ice advantage, but it's not like a complete advantage, because in order for them to get the advantage, they have to travel twice, right? Because everybody wants game 3 at home, right? So the team that has the home team advantage, they get games 2 and 3, right? Which means they have to travel to game 1, and then they have to travel again for their home ice games 2 and 3. So they're traveling twice. The team that doesn't have the advantage,
that's a Smitty.
they're only traveling
formula,
once.
and
What is that?
correct. That's a Smitty thing he said for years, and he says that every weekend, when there's a split weekend, and there's a lot to be said for that, because the team that didn't have to travel twice does have an advantage the second game. So I agree with him. I think that's something, when you think about it, depending on how far away they are apart, and some of our teams are quite a bit. So you have a scenario where a team is going to make a very difficult time, going forward with it. I think if you're traveling,
creates more opportunity for an upset.
Yes, yeah, I agree, and I think it's we'll have to see how that works out. Sometimes what's done in the past is sometimes a team will get there a day early, just to get some rest for the team before they have to go back. So that's happened also too.
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic. And so what are you looking forward to the most for the second half of the season? Like, what are some of the goals that you have for the league, and some of the stuff that you would like to see, that whether it's a goal or something that's already in place that you're looking forward to? Like, what are you looking forward to for the second half of this year?
Well, from a league standpoint, from a total attendance standpoint, we're reached, we'd like to get over the 1 million mark, and that's a goal. The second thing is to get as much as we can, try to get teams on a more parity if we can. And you're always looking for more parity as a league, so that any team has the opportunity to win in a certain game, and that's significant in our opinion. So we're looking for that. I think we're generally satisfied with the quality of play, and it's certainly the league is getting better every year, and that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So awesome. Well, Don, thanks for joining us. I'll catch up with you soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Don. Great insight there from Don. Don's in the Discord, by the way. Remember, the conversation for these episodes continue in the Discord. You can get there from swanhockey.io. Free to join. So yeah, we're going to head over to Dave Jackson now. But before we do, let's do the proof of attendance token code for this episode. So the proof of attendance token code for this episode is going to be New Year. 2 words entered in on the podcast page on swanhockey.io. You also must sign into the site. So sign into the site, and be sure to link your Discord. And again, if you have 5 or more of those tokens, you will have access to Club Fed at this point. And again, once we're at 10 members, we will add the club only chat channel in the Discord server. So let's head over to Dave. What's going on, Dave? How are you?
Eric, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. First segment back here in the new year. Good amount of suspensions to go over since we last spoke. Guess the silver lining is guys are starting to finally maybe understand the physicality side of it, but losing some emotion here. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some great games, some really good hockey games over the last 2 weeks since we've been here. Probably had a dozen or so suspensions. Not many hockey related suspensions. I mean, I think if we go historically, people think they think about the Federal Hockey League, and they've seen YouTube videos of stuff that's sort of over the line. I think our hockey is really good hockey. I mean, I want to showcase the goals we that are scored, the plays that are made, and we don't have the stuff that people historically or stereotypically think we have. We don't have a bunch of goonery. We don't have a bunch of fights. We have really, really good hockey. And in saying that, in the last 2 weeks, I think I've had 2 suspensions for hockey related on ice, whether it be boarding or bad body checks or aggressors. The rest of the suspensions are just guys unable to control their mouth. And it's unfortunate. And at this level, we don't have a mechanism to find players. So when fans sometimes go, well, why was this guy suspended? He didn't really do anything wrong. Well, when the game's over and you cross that line, you say things you shouldn't say, and the referees have zero ability to penalize you because the game's over. I have zero ability to make you make it hurt financially in your pocket. You're going to be suspended.
Yeah, there's got to be something.
And the players know that. So you don't get freebies when the game is over. And if players continue to do that, it falls on me to support and stand up for the officials. Because once that game's over, they have zero recourse on what they can do, and they don't deserve the abuse that they take. So I step in, and guys will get game suspensions. So there's been like 13 of them in the last 2 weeks, and quite frankly, that's on them. That's not on me. It's not on the officials. It's on them and their inability to moderate what they say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just, completely avoidable too. Guys should be on the ice. The teams want them on the ice. The fans want them on the ice. Just losing emotions. And, you talk about abusive official and everything. Why don't you run through what it's like for an official in this league?
So I don't think people quite understand how difficult it is to referee single A professional hockey. I obviously worked at the highest level for almost 3 decades, and the pressure at that level is unbelievable, and you have to perform. But the hockey itself is easier to referee. You've got guys making the right play, and you've got guys that don't stress the extracurricular stuff. They're not like, sure, they get upset in a moment and a bit of verbal abuse, but they don't do the kind of things that we see happening in all levels of minor hockey,
Sure.
minor pro hockey. And the officials work in these games. You got to be prepared for just anything that could happen that you've never seen happen in an NHL game, because you got varying skill levels. You got guys that are possibly frustrated that they're not playing at a higher level, and they just do things that are out of the ordinary. And that's why for these officials, what people don't realize is hockey players that are playing in single A hockey, it's still a full-time job for them. For our officials, these guys have day jobs. These guys are either, college students, or they got a wife and kids, or supporting a family. They're working till, if they live anywhere nearby, they're probably working till noon on a Friday, hopping in their car, driving 3-4 hours to get to the game, getting a quick bite to eat, then in a rink, and they're doing this game. And I had the luxury of getting in night before every game I did, wake up next morning, go to the gym, have a pregame meal, have a nap in the afternoon. These guys don't get that luxury. And in a lot of buildings, they're not treated the way I was treated, obviously, either. The locker rooms in the NHL are stocked with the same amenities the players' locker rooms are. I mean, you get treated very well. Single A hockey, as much as teams try, I'm not blaming the teams. In most cases, they try, but it's not the luxury that the guys get in the NHL. So they're out there busting their butt every night for not a lot of money. And I would dare say that there's the fans that criticize the referees would not do this job for what the referees get paid. These guys do it for love of the game. These guys do it because their goal was to work professional hockey. They've made it to professional hockey. They're the best referees available for the games we have, and that trickles all the way down from the top. People think the referees in the NHL are no good and we should replace them and get better referees. Well, I ask them, these fans, and I read these fan pages, they're criticizing our referees in the FPHL. Well, if the NHL were to get rid of their staff and go get other referees, well, they'd be getting guys from the minors who are also being criticized as being no good. So I don't think a fan truly realizes how fast the game of hockey is. Things happen on the ice, and I would say 99% of the fans in the building don't know what the call is or what was missed until they watch it on the jumbotron. And then they
Yeah.
see it and they start booing. Or they'll see a play live and boo, and then they'll see the replay on the jumbotron and go, "Oh, that really wasn't what I thought it was." But these officials out there are making calls, split-second calls in the moment. That's really tough to do. And you're not static. You're moving the whole time, trying to get the best sight line you can. You're going to get screened. You're going to get bumped. You're dodging pucks going 100 miles an hour. It's not as easy as it looks. I know it's simple to sit back in your armchair and go, oh, how do you make that call? How do you miss that call? Every suspension I give or every penalty I rescind, I try and put myself in the referee's shoes and say, yes, he made this call, or yes, he missed that call, but why did he make it? Or why did he miss it? What was happening that caused him to not be able to see that call or to call it wrongly? And there's
Yeah. To
always
misjudge it.
there's always a reason. And I don't think the fans understand that. And I would love for any fan watching this who thinks they can do a better job, send us your resume. Because honestly, there's not some farm out in the boondocks with a bunch of qualified referees just in the bullpen waiting to be called. They aren't there. We, I mean, the entire eastern part of the US, we search for the best referees willing to work our league. Now, you've got financial constraints. You're not going to be flying a guy that doesn't live near any city. You're not going to pay hundreds of dollars every week to fly. We need guys that live in the area, relatively speaking. And we need guys that their schedules are available, much like the guys that play in the FPHL. If you get offered a contract in the East Coast League or even hopefully the American League, you're going to jump at it.
Right.
And if we have referees that get offered games in the East Coast Hockey League or the American Hockey League, we can't begrudge them for taking those games over our games. Their goal is to make it to the NHL.
Right. They're working for something too. Like you said, like they're putting in a lot, and it's, you know, one thing that's always fascinated my mind, like, you know, watching like, you know, NHL level and everything, is how good the referees are, like as skaters, right? And how like a lot of them, like, you know, they're in top physical condition. I mean, I remember being under in the Prudential Center, you know, and seeing the referees warming. I mean, they warm up like players. They're taking it just as serious as the players are. They're prepping their bodies, or, you know, everything. It's just like players.
Yep, it sure is. And they're expected to meet the same fitness standards as players when we used to come in the training camp. I mean, our fitness tests were grueling. I'd spend the whole summer, you know, eating grilled chicken breast and, you know, drinking ultra light beer just because
Getting right for training camp.
Getting ready for training camp, you know, the percentage of body fat, your weight, and then you go through these bike tests, these shuttle run tests, core strength tests, all those kind of things. And the guys that are doing our league, the guys that are doing all minor hockey, they also have those standards that they have to meet when they come to training camp and stuff. So it's not like we've just signed up a guy in the parking lot and said, "Hey, do you want to go in and referee this hockey game?" These are dedicated. I mean, that's what people think sometimes.
Yeah.
These are dedicated officials who all want to work in the NHL.
Yeah. And doing a very hard job.
Doing a very hard job. Now, I would say the majority of them are never going to work in the NHL, but that's not a slight on them. That's just a slight on there's 36 NHL referees.
Yeah. Majority of the players won't play in the NHL, right?
And
like
there's thousands and thousands. Exactly. There's thousands and thousands of officials between Canada and the US.
Yep.
So only a select few are going to make the NHL. But these guys are doing it for pride. They're not doing it for the money. Because if they're doing it for the money, they could make more money doing something else.
Yeah.
So I hope some players are watching this. I hope some FPHL players are watching this episode and going, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to ever make the NHL as a player, but I'm still young enough. I can skate well. I know the game well. I'm going to give officiating a shot.
Yeah,
Because if you look at the NHL now, they have a combine every year in August where they invite 100 potential referees. And of that 100, probably 20 of them are guys that have refereed before, maybe started when they were young. But about 75 or 80 of them are recently retired players from all levels of hockey. Not many NHL players, but American League guys, East Coast guys, Division I guys, CHL, USHL guys that just went, you know what? I wasn't going to make it at a higher level. I didn't feel like playing minor hockey. So they went to the camp. And now the NHL, I would say of a staff of, they've got 72 officials between their referees and linesmen. Of those 72 officials today, I'm going to say at least 25, 30 of them have played some level of pro hockey.
Okay.
And that's the new mode. I mean, these guys are athletes. These guys can skate. These guys know the game. We can teach them the referee. So if there's anybody out there playing in the Fed or somebody who watches who wants to referee, get in touch with Paul Jean. And we'll facilitate that for you. Because we need good officials.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, sounds great, Dave. We'll be back next week.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Sounds good. I will see you then.
Great talking to you.
All right. Thanks,
See you
Dave. You too. And that's going to do it for this episode. Always a pleasure, everyone. And I will see you next week, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you for being the best part of this episode of FPHL Beyond the Glass by Swan Hockey. We will see you soon.